responsibility for T&Tec on the executive of the OWTU. Right, so I'd like to thank members of the media for coming out at this difficult time so that the population of the country, the real owners of T&Tec, can understand what is taking place at this utility. In the wake of the pandemic crisis, the union and management would have hammered out an agreement on the 25th of March, where parties would have agreed to take certain measures to protect the workers, to put in temporary work arrangements that would see the workers minimizing their contact with members of the public, and those who had to face members of the public, organize the work in such a way that if they had picked up the virus, they would have enough time between shifts to detect any symptoms and take the measures necessary to protect themselves, their families, and their co-workers. This was meant that the workforce would have been split in two, with an A and a B shift, and that these shifts would be rotated on a 2-week shift. Given the off period, 14 days, which is the recommended quarantine period by the health authorities. So the workers, if they picked up the virus at all, they would have enough time on the off period to be symptomatic and to take corrective measures. The Commission reneged on that, and they are trying now to institute a 7-day work roster, which would have the following effects. Firstly, it would not be fair because a shift cycle will ensure that all the shifts work equal amounts of time in a 2-week cycle, and in a 7-week cycle, some shifts would work much more than others. Now, it is highly irresponsible for them to arrange a shift that is inherently unfair and does not protect the workers or give them enough quarantine time to detect any infection so that corrective measures could be taken. Very importantly, we also agreed on taking certain measures to protect the workers, including the provision of personal protective equipment, gloves, masks, etc. And the union also insisted, and there was agreement on getting these infrared thermometers that would detect fever in people coming into the compound. The union was assured that this will be done. However, so far the Commission has only sourced one, and we need to have one for every major operating center. So that is one of the things that we found very, very odd, that they would renege on something like that. We have also workers complaining that they have been sent out to work without the necessary protection. Now, the OSH Act protects workers if they have been sent out on unsafe work conditions. They have the right to protect themselves, and they have the right to call for some sort of independent audit to ensure that the Commission meets its responsibilities. We are dealing with a very irresponsible management. You recall a few days ago, the President General had to intervene on this matter, and the management of T&Tec was brought to the negotiating table, kicking and screaming. But we did manage to hold strong and did get our agreement, which we felt would have protected the workers. No sooner had the union informed the workers of the new arrangements, the management tried to renege on it. And we are saying to the national community, this kind of irresponsibility is going to put not only your health at risk, because our workers are expected to work throughout the crisis, but it's also going to affect your supply if it is that we cannot find emergency workers to maintain the reliability and the safety of your supply. Right? We call on the Minister of Public Utilities and the Board of T&Tec to ensure that the T&Tec management operates responsibly To ensure that the T&Tec management operates responsibly while protecting its workers and ensuring a reliability of supply to the population. This behavior in this particularly dangerous time shows the callousness of the executive management of T&Tec, where initially we had to prevent them from trying to expand the contact hours with the workers and members of the public. They wanted to have the workers work extra hours while they are protecting themselves in their offices, telling workers that they must leave documents outside, only having conference meetings, electronic conference meetings, and so on. But the workers who are out there, they're not providing the PPE, they're not providing the infrared thermometers, and they generally have reneged on an arrangement which would have minimized the risk to the workers. So fundamentally, we are calling on the powers that be that they should act responsibly, ensure that T&Tec adheres to the agreement, and that we will continue to provide those reliability that T&Tec has become known for without putting our members at unnecessary risk. So we will entertain any questions that you may have now. A normal shift? Well, it varies from area to area. The three largest areas we have are north, south, and east. And you can have as much as 10 emergency crews operating in a 24-hour period in those large areas. Central and Tobago would have smaller crews, but part of the agreement was that we augment the emergencies because we have agreed that all construction and maintenance work should cease, and that some of those daylight crews will augment the emergency operations. Right, so it will vary from area to area, but Tobago has 5 emergency crews. It could be augmented by about 3. Central has, I think, 7, and they could be augmented as well, so that you can beef up the emergency section, and you only operate for serious trouble reports, and that will minimize the contact. The rest of workers in the distribution areas, the field workers, should be on standby, only reporting to work when necessary. All right, those are the guys that will come to your house and businesses to restore supply. All right, they should be differentiated from those guys who would go there, the workers who would go there to the build lines and do the maintenance, like when T&Tec advertises for outage, those guys will be repairing the lines. Those are not emergency. That's normally construction and maintenance gang. Right. What the agreement would have hammered out is that the workers will work their normal shift for 2 weeks. So if you are working 1 day, 1 evening, 1 night, and 2 days off, you work that for 2 weeks, right? And then you go home and rest, and the other half of the crews will work the same shift for 2 weeks, and then they go on rest. The advantage of that is you're minimizing the chance for infection, and you're also giving yourselves enough time to see if there are any symptoms before you go back out to work and infect your co-workers and so on. If you do a shorter shift, you're going to have unfair work distribution because some people will be off more than they're on in that 7-day period. In a 14-day period, everybody will work the same. And the commission knows that, but they just don't care. Well, that is what they are asking the workers to do. Generally, the workers are very happy when the union explained the reason for the 14-day roster. They were generally in agreement with it, and therefore that is the key. The workers will have to protect themselves because that's their number one responsibility. The managers have protected themselves. They have sealed themselves in the office. They are not interacting with the workers, and they expect the workers to go there and face all the risk. Yes, within this essential industry, there are groups of workers who are who must not work, no matter how bad the crisis gets. So they include the workers and emergency, which I just described. It includes people in control who manages the grid. You talk about the telecom operators and those workers who receive calls from the public. All of them in support of the emergency crews, they have to work. Right? Other arrangements have been made for the administrative staff based on the level 3 status that the Prime Minister issued last Thursday. Those workers will be off the job. Right. While we have some issues at the moment with the regular PPE, that would be the fire retardant clothing and so on, it's not critical. However, the mask, the gloves, right, is in short supply, and some managers are refusing to issue sufficient quantities because they want it to stretch. Now, the workers have a right to refuse to work if they don't have these. Now, I want the members of the public to understand that the social distancing policy is imperative to the control of the infection rate of this particular disease. And we agreed that we are going to make arrangements that we will have the workers sit far apart in the vehicles, as far apart as possible. Given the fact that it's almost impossible to get a 6-foot distance inside a vehicle, it is imperative that the workers get those masks and gloves so that they could do the work. The Commission is irresponsible by not ensuring that this is the case. And members of the public, we want to also ask them, try and keep social distance if you have to ask the crews a question. Because we have had reports of members of the public being very belligerent when the crews ask them to stay a certain distance away from them. Right? We are providing a service, a very important service, particularly in this crisis. And therefore, it is in the interest of all of us that we protect these crews when they come to serve you. All right? We have been very heroic in the past with disasters. We have helped people in outside of Trinidad. Therefore, our workers are dedicated, but they have to be protected. And the management is not interested in providing maximum protection for them. So we ask the members of the public to cooperate with the crews and try and stay within the safe distance if you have to interact with them at all. Okay, that's one of the reasons why the union, in its wisdom, and this position taken here, I want to emphasize, it was not the executive's position. We had a team of experienced linesmen, one of whom is a trainer of linesmen. We sat down, they consulted with their branches, they came, we brainstormed, we came up with this, and it was submitted as a position coming from the workers themselves. And that is very, very important. The management, because the ideas didn't come from them, have decided that they're going to disrupt what they agreed to on Wednesday evening. Okay. We have more than half of the crews on standby, right? So in that eventuality, it's important that we have people on standby. to replace any, for the worst case scenario, to replace the crews which would be affected. It's a very, very difficult conversation to have, but the possibility exists that could happen, and hence the reason why we are trying to work with the Commission to ensure that we have enough crews on standby in a worst case scenario. The workers have a choice, right? They have a responsibility. They have a duty to protect themselves. This union fought again to have promulgated, and have been fighting to have it managed properly, implemented properly in the workplace, and that is the OSH Act of 2006 as amended. And therefore, under that act, workers have the right to refuse work in unsafe conditions. Right? The Commission is putting the workers they're confusing the workforce, and they are not protecting the workforce. Because those managers, like-minded managers, don't have to take any risk at all. Right? We are getting reports from Tobago where there's some concerns that these managers are flying like if they're taking a taxi between Trinidad and Tobago, and they're very concerned about that because we have a very irresponsible management in T&Tec. That they don't know unnecessary travel should not be practiced. And the workers are watching and observing the callous way in which the executive management and some line managers are dealing with the situation. All right, depends. Generally, the crew has 5. Some crews have as much as 10 on it. The tree trimming crews are larger than the emergency construction and maintenance crews. That's it.